was your...
Well, I had when I walked in, I was writing down in the book, board book. Whatever it's in the board book.
Uh-oh, crumbs on my chair.
We discussing this.
Dan, we got 30 seconds.
At the budget meeting. This it also involves hiring a staff member.
No, I
You're
don't.
going to have to bring out the baseball bat, Sonny.
You know, I had one.
I know you did.
For
All I
2
wanna
years
do is
as I was chairman, I used a little short baseball
It
bat
was
instead of a gun.
great. It was great.
Good idea. Yeah, they're
Loved
gonna put it
it.
on the special orders of business, I guess. How do you,
It was the inaugural year of the Traverse City Beach Bones.
on the agenda?
Yeah.
Not on the
I don't see it.
All right, if we could bring this meeting to order. This would be the January meeting of the Grand Traverse County Ways and Means Committee. This is a committee of the whole of the Grand Traverse County Boards of Commissioners. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sarah, will you call the roll, please?
Lathrop,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Lemkool,
Here.
Thomas,
Yep.
Inman,
Here?
Rennie,
Here.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. The next order of business will be the approval of the December 18th regular meetings of the Ways and Means Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the December 18th, 2013 Ways and Means Committee minutes.
Support.
Motion by Inman, supported by Max Bauer. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. If you would, please, Sarah.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may at his or her discretion extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Orders of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Having heard the rules for public comment, is there anyone wishing to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. I have 2 additional items to add. The first would be under special order of business. That would be on your desk this evening is a sheet entitled Grand Traverse County Jail Prisoner Reimbursement. Sergeant Ritter and Captain Hall were here and the sheriff a while back and made a presentation about trying to collect money from prisoners that was due Grand Traverse County. And we're going to get an update on that and hear about that again. And then the second item is Alicia Kropa has asked to have an opportunity to speak about scheduling the joint meeting with the Parks and Recreation Commission. And I would like to put that under unfinished business because it's an ongoing discussion. So with those 2 items, I would entertain a motion, unless someone else has something else, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, motion by Max Bauer, supported by Lathrop. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Consent calendar, there are no items under the consent calendar either for receive and file or approval, so we will move on to special order of business. Sergeant Ritter.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening. As you know, back in the fall of 2011, we came to the board with a proposal to try and collect more of our outstanding debt that we have for housing and medical costs. The way we wanted to do it, Sergeant Ritter is going to explain that again this evening, but the board was not comfortable with that and asked us to try a different path, which we did, and we'll talk about that probably next week at the budget hearing. But in February of, I believe it was February of 2013, the board passed a resolution 23-2012 that allowed us to make some concessions on the outstanding amounts owed for jail housing and medical costs. And we did that this year, early part of this year, and saw an increase. But Sergeant Ritter is going to explain what we're coming with, we're proposing again tonight. And as part of the budget process, we were asked to come up with ideas on how we can increase revenue, and this is one of those ways. So it'll take a little while. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight, because we want to get this in front of you prior to the budget hearing next week. Sergeant Ritter?
Thanks, Sheriff. Okay, so many of you saw this presentation, at least part of this presentation already. The first part of this is we're looking at what do we have the authority to do, where do we get the authority, what kind of increase can we expect, and how do we plan on doing it. A lot of these first slides, I'm going to kind of just give you some bullet points on. It's just the law explaining why we have the authority to do it and why we're coming to you to even ask, because you have the oversight for it. So on this first slide, this is the law indicating why we can charge the inmates housing fees. This next slide includes county jails in the act to allow us to charge the fees. This next slide regulates the fees we can charge up to $60 a day or actual cost, whichever is less. And it says we have to look at the finances of each individual before we charge them. This part of the law also says that we can charge expenses to collect those debts as well. This part talks about that we're required, what information we're required to look at on the individual inmate as far as their finances, their ability to pay. We have a financial information sheet we collect on every individual we book in that goes more in depth than what the law requires. This talks about the board's right to look at who we're charging. You guys can request that information anytime. Look at what individuals we're charged and what information we use to determine they had the ability to pay. This one talks about a prisoner's obligation to comply with the act. They have to pay reimbursement to the county for staying in jail. And it also talks about their refusal to comply infringes on their ability to have good time. This one talks about the board having oversight and being able to review or request an investigation on any documents pertaining to reimbursement for county fees associated with incarceration. This one's what gives us the right to take civil litigation against any inmate who refuses to pay for up to 6 years after their incarceration. This one talks about the venue. It has to be done in Grand Traverse County regardless of where they live, what their county residence is. This one kind of came up a little bit in our last presentation, so I did want to point out this slide a little bit. We do take into account and have to, by law, anyone that has to pay child support, spousal support, or have other moral obligations before we look at taking fees from them for incarceration. This one talks about that we can get a court order and take a judgment against property and hold property to receive payment. And here we're talking about the venue again in Grand Traverse County. We can get restraining orders if necessary to keep people from selling their snowmobiles until we've satisfied our debt. And we can even have certain property assigned through the court to somebody else to prevent somebody from selling stuff until debts or obligations are taken care of. Here it just talks about we wouldn't go after homesteads. We're not allowed to go after homesteads. We're looking at people that have the ability to pay and have the toys, and looking at seizing toys if we had to, if somebody really chooses not to pay us. And here talks about the judge and sheriff's responsibility to assist the prosecuting attorney in making sure that the reimbursements are collected and the debts are satisfied under the act. And this is the part of the law that says any and all reimbursements through this act will go into the county's general fund. So why do we think this will work? Because it has a proven track record. Probably the most notable county is Macomb County. They're the one that started this model. They're the county that many have modeled after. In your packets, you've got a little bit older outline. We've got some updated numbers here. They started this program in 1985. We intend to use a lot of the same collection strategies they're using down there, which I'll discuss in a few minutes. When they originally started the program, back in '85, I believe there were about $4,000 they were collecting. Now, with the exception of 2011, they're consistently collecting over $500,000 in general housing fees. In 2011, they changed their program. And when they changed their program, they lost about $300,000. In 2012, they changed their program back, and it started to climb, and it's right back to where it was. The 86th District Court here locally also is doing a similar type of debt collection. They have a little bit different rules to go by. They can put somebody in jail if they don't pay their fees. We're looking at taking different avenues. But here are some of the last few years' collections through the district court. They're collecting 54% of their billing right now, which is incredible. Our history with collections in Grand Traverse County, over the past 6 years, we'll talk about 2013 in a second. Here are some of the totals we've turned over to core recovery. You'll note in the last 2 years there was a significant reduction in what we turned over to core recovery. After you passed the resolution in 2012, the sheriff did mention we tried to do some mailings and some different things without just turning things over to core. But without having somebody to directly monitor and run a program like that, we had some success, but it wasn't what we were hoping we would have. On these, probably the most notable thing when you look at what we turn over to core recovery and what we get back, we'll look at 2013 here. In 2013, we turned $1.69 million over to core recovery. On that, core recovery collected a little over $18,000. Their fees were a little over $5,000 of that. So they're collecting about 2% or less than 2% of what we give them. And then they keep 28% of what they receive. So for what we're getting, it's an awfully expensive venture. There were some concerns in the past that we were talking about people's ability to pay. Again, this program is designed so if somebody's in charge of it, they have time to look at every individual that we look at, who's worth pursuing going after, who's not. We're not going to go after a guy that doesn't have the ability to pay. We're looking for those that have the ability to pay, have means, and are thumbing their nose and decide not to. We took a random sampling of 200 past and present inmates. We wanted to look at their financial status. Did we think this was a viable program? Were there enough people to really consider doing this? Of that 200, 31% of them had child support obligations. Now, some of that 31% could probably still pay, but we scratched them right off the list. Another 13% were on disability, 6% were indigent. That left 60% of the 200 we looked at that had the ability to make payments, or 9% reported income or savings enough to pay their entire housing fees in full at time of booking. Considering that 60% of those people had the ability to pay, if we would have taken 50% of what we turned over to core recovery last year and only collected 20% on the 50% of the accounts, That'd have been another $168,000 in revenue for last year. So what are we expecting to collect? We took an average over the past 2.5 years of sentenced inmates. We're running 83 sentenced inmates a day. When we're charging $20 a day in housing fees, that equates to about $605,000 a year in sentenced billings. We average about $32,000 a year in medical billings, for a total of $637,900. Right now, with the collection efforts we have, we're consistently collecting about $105,000 of people just willing to pay their bills. But of the $532,900 that we're not collecting, our first year goal is to collect 20% of that debt, or $580 of additional revenue. Our long-term goal is to achieve 35% of our non-collected billings right now, equating to $186,000 in additional revenue. Again, on February 29th, you all approved a resolution. You did give us some permission to get a little more progressive, and it was a good first step. Now we need to get somebody in place to really run a program and make it a viable program. Some of the things we're looking at doing, again, combining previous billings and current billings, making them manageable for people that are willing to pay and don't have the ability to pay large sums or pay them off. Offering reductions for people willing to make large lump sum payments and pay their bills off. Offer reduced fees for incarcerated inmates who are willing to pay their fees in full prior to release. If need be, file an individual or group small claim suits against individuals failing to keep any payment arrangements we have. Filing for collection and execution against property such as vehicles, boats, campers, snowmobiles. Any returning inmates, we're looking at setting up an automatic deduction in their commissary account. So a large portion, whether it be 95 or not, instead of being able to buy candy and cakes while they're in jail, they're going to pay their housing fees first. And then also looking at possibly using additional collections agencies to rotate the debt to try to get better collections, more eyes on them, different action at different times. When we closed 500 section, as all of you know, it brought 3.5 to 4 officers, depending on how you look at it, back into the main jail. Of course, some of that workload, or all of that workload, came back into the jail too. You saw a reduction in overtime when that happened. We figure right now that equates to about 2 additional bodies in the jail. We're looking at dedicating one of those bodies full-time in a collections effort to make this a viable program. You know, approving this plan and a body to do it, it would greatly, I think, enhance our ability to collect these overdue debts.
Herb?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Lemkool, supported by Lathrop. Further discussion, Larry?
Just a quick question on the, you said something about the original proposal called for hiring a full-time collections specialist. In this proposal, we will utilize existing staff. So is this going to take a corrections officer offline, or how are you going to do this?
Right now, that's the only way we have. Without hiring an additional body, he'll take a full-time corrections officer offline.
Okay, ramifications of doing that.
Well, we noticed an overtime savings when we got those bodies in.
Okay.
That will be affected if we take a body out of the mix to put them in full-time corrections.
So in terms of supervision of inmates and pushing buttons to get prisoners over to the court and all that kind of good stuff,
Well,
is that all just going to get wiggled in?
You know, the job will get done. You know, we had jobs that we didn't always have a regular staffed person to do before we closed down 500 section.
Okay.
We're reducing that load by 1 now that gave us the relief.
Okay.
So there will be some impact on the overtime.
So you think that's going to be it's going to take that officer's 40 hours a week to do that?
I think when you're looking at the number of counts we're looking at, yeah, I mean, all of 40 hours a week.
Okay.
Well, 2 points. One, I did note that you had a spot in there where you talked about possibly guaranteeing wages or taxes or income tax returns, and you didn't mention that, Todd, during the discussion, but it
I'm
was on
sorry.
the screen. Second thing, we need to talk about the temporary closing of 500, because we have not closed 500 yet. It is still recognized by the Department of Corrections, and at this time, I believe that is the idea. We're going to continue to have that being recognized by the Department of Corrections. We will hear next week from Captain Hall about his staffing requirements within the jail, and for those of us that have been around here a long time, we'll remember back that when Dennis Liebert was here back, several years ago, he told us we were already understaffed, 8 to 12 people in our jail, depending on how you looked at it. So, we have to remember taking a corrections officer to do this job with is probably not a long-term solution, but I'm personally, I'm really in favor of supporting this possibility to get it set up and going. Once we get this thing set up and we've got the records all in place, possibly an office specialist or someone from the finance department or even can oversee the collection of the fees. But, it's going to take someone with some history and knowledge about how the system internally within the jail works to get this program established. And I think this is a good idea. Sergeant Ritter was here with it before. We chose not to do it, to try to do the core recovery thing. And, 2% collection on $1.7 million is almost embarrassing.
Do we have to do a reclassification for this person?
No, we'll still be a corrections officer.
No,
So
I
it'll still
don't
be a
believe so.
correction officer?
Correct.
So you don't have to do that?
Collections officers run some of the programming inside of our jail. They can run this program.
Okay.
It would just be a specialty assignment.
And would this have to take immediate effect, or can you wait until next week when we approve it?
That would be above my decision.
Above your pay grade.
The boss is here, so,
Yeah, next
okay,
week will be fun.
okay.
Are there any further questions? Chris, did you have any questions?
Oh, that was the other question I was going to, how close are you going to be working with the prosecuting attorney's office on these?
Very closely. I met with Prosecutor Cooney today, and he told me that I can express his full support in this program. They have no issue assisting us with this. And again, the number of people that I think we would have to take to that extreme, that we're going to the prosecuting attorney and actually taking small claims suits against, is going to be very small. For the most part, there are enough other tools here that I think people are, most of these people, with a little encouragement, want to take care of what they need to take care of. So this is going to give us the tools and somebody to give them that encouragement.
Chris?
I appreciate very much the sheriff and you bringing this back to us after what we tried previously did not work. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to experiment and take a little risk, and thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, that brings us to items for his move. There were none. Department action items. The first would be from the Department of Public Works in regard to credit card debt payments. Dean, are you talking about that, or?
I
Is that what
didn't
Chuck is
plan
here for?
on it, but I can. Two items from Mike Slater regarding, and he's actually, on page 16, you have the resolution, but in the process of implementing their new software through BS&A, we had some discussion regarding their ability to collect or to use credit cards in that operation, and I had some concern over previous board resolutions. The plan was to use Official Payments, which was the vendor that the treasurer had asked, and the board approved to use, and that's what, this would just formalize that. Due to the fact that there's a previous board resolution which had identified Fifth Third Bank as our vendor for those types of transactions. And I'm fully in support of this. The director, Mr. Slater, does explain what he's asking for, and it's basically for this board to approve official payments, which is outlined in the resolution on page 16, as the vendor to make that, for the processing of those credit card and online transactions.
You have a resolution on page 16 that the clerk will appropriately number at some point or another. Do we have a motion to approve, or?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Rennie, supported by Thomas. Further discussion? Okay, that being that this resolution be resolved that the Board of Commissioners, Grand Traverse County Department of Public Works is allowed to use the vendor official payments to accept payments online or over the phone using credit or debit cards and electronic checks, with transaction fees being passed on to the customer that opt to use this service. I think that was a key piece when I read it, was that there will be no cost or reduction of payments to the DPW in this regard. That being said, remember, this is an enterprise fund. It is not Grand Traverse County money.
Sure. When we have an automatic deduct out of a checking account for this, there's no fee at this time. Is this going to continue being that way?
This would not be, these transactions are not automatically processed through our bank account. It's all set up. It's an online payment application through the BSNA software. It's all, the convenience fee basically is passed on to the customer.
Because currently, I have a bill that comes in every month, and I have it set up that it automatically gets paid. And I just wondered if this is going to increase, is this going to be a fee for me to be able to do that? Because I think that would be wrong, because that encourages people to keep their bills paid on a regular basis. I can understand if you use a credit card that there's a fee to be charged, but for an automatic transfer of money from my account to your account shouldn't be, there's no fee. There shouldn't be a fee.
I'm not sure exactly if we're talking about the same item. If you're paying your utility bill through the Department of Public Works, through something you've set up, that's a separate transaction. If you're going to pay that with a credit card, there will be the additional fee.
Right.
That's.
And I don't use a credit card. Do we just automatically transfer from bank to?
Right.
I think that's a separate deal.
You wouldn't be doing that without your authorization.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right, we have a motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. The next item would be basically similar. It's allowing the Department of Public Works to collect from the fees at the septic plant by credit card through their EVO merchant services.
Move to approve the resolution.
Support.
Motion by Thomas, supported by Lemko. Further discussion?
Just
Dean,
a
go
quick comment. Again, the director, Mike Slater, basically needed to find a merchant, this EVO Merchant Services, to lower the cost of doing business for the septage haulers. He was able to significantly reduce the cost they pay, because these transactions are paid for by the septage haulers when they bring waste to our septage treatment facility. So this was to lower their cost of doing business at our plant, and Mike wanted this to also be formally approved by the county board.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded.
There's
Further
a question by
question?
Sarah.
Sarah?
Are these, both of these resolutions, are they for immediate approval, or
No,
bringing them back?
they'll be verified next week.
Okay, thank you.
They've been getting around the way it was, so they can wait till next week.
Yeah.
Okay. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. That takes care of the DPW, brings us to planning and development. John and Jean and their wild plan.
Good evening, my name is John Syke, excuse me, Planning and Development Director for Grand Traverse County, and Tonight, I'm proposing a reorganization of the staffing plan for the Planning and Development Department. Just as a kind of refresher of the department, for 2014, we expect really our budget is kind of split between general fund, which is about 45%, and non-general fund sources, which is about 55%. That's changed a little bit, mainly because we actually had greater participation in terms of our non-general fund sources, but within the last year or two, we've had some changes. That non-general fund support for our department is mainly through brownfield administration, community development block grant, EPA grants, housing fund, and other sources. And we're kind of a hybrid. We're kind of a county department, but we're also kind of like a nonprofit organization, and we realize our revenues are going to fluctuate from time to time. And where we're at right now is we're not able to support currently our staffing plan, so we've decided to make some adjustments in that staffing plan. One of the things in terms of the we have a retirement in our office. Midge Werner, who was a planning technician, retired. That position, what we'd like to do is to change that, eliminate the planning technician, and add a office specialist. That will be a savings to the county in terms of the general fund. We'd like to see that would be a savings of
9%.
It's 9%. It's roughly about $18,000. So that would be helpful for the budget situation here at Grand Traverse County. We're also looking at the removal of the planner position, which was a position that was funded through non-general fund sources. And that's where we've had some changes in terms of what we've been available that have been outlined in the memo that I presented to you this evening, but it's mainly some reduction in brownfield projects, which by state law reduces the amount that we can use for administration. Some of our budget limitations in terms of our EPA grants. Also, if you recall, a couple of years ago, we took on the housing coordinator position, and we've been trying to make that self-sustaining. That eliminated an annual appropriation by the county general fund in terms of $40,000. So we've been still trying to work through that in terms of making that a completely self-supporting position. But this is the proposal that we have for 2014, and how we recognize that we still have a lot of work in our department, and we'll continue to actually see that grow. What we anticipate to supplement this is utilizing contracts with consultants on an as-needed basis for specific projects. We felt that would probably be achieved in terms of helping us to achieve what we need to do to get our programs active and implemented.
Motion to approve the recommendation by John Syke for the personnel change request as presented.
Support.
I have a motion by Inman, supported by Lemko. Further discussion. Chris?
I have a question. I noticed, John, that, and this is probably not a question for you, it's a question for Dean and Dave. John's salary as director is 100% general fund. Have we looked at allocating a certain percentage of his salary towards these other funds? I mean, clearly, he is in charge of the brownfield administration and land bank, et cetera, et cetera.
Want to take that, John?
That's something we've talked about, and I think that's something we're going to explore for this year, because you're right, I think there's part of my time could be charged to that program. And
Well, since you're supervising it, I would...
right.
Okay.
I mean, it's a smaller percentage because...
And that's fine.
But it is a certain percentage. I think what we're making some adjustments this year, so that's why I mentioned the savings. I think that's a savings that we can afford to
Yes.
the county right now, but at the same time, there's some fluctuations that could result ultimately some increased savings as we go through 2014.
I appreciate you looking, John.
Dan?
I'm a little confused. We have a person that's retiring, and we have a hiring freeze. So why are we filling his position? We haven't even looked at his department yet, analyzed it.
David?
If you look at what he's doing, he's eliminating the person who's retiring. He's eliminating that position and creating an office specialist position, which is a lower level classification,
Well, but
and eliminating a planner position on top of that.
It's like a wash.
It's actually, he's losing a position and converting one to a lower level. So he's making a reduction and an elimination. Well, what we don't know is how much that will save. Because what's not spoken and what's not signed yet are contracts to do various things. And you're working on something with the DDA, you're going to do some functions for them. You know, when we get to the point where we sign those contracts, we'll know how much we have reduced the budget as a result of these staff eliminations. But John's coming in tonight to reduce the staff first.
Well, I just want to make sure that, you know, one of the options would be just not fill the position, you know, and have them, like we considered doing with GIS, retiring person, just don't fill it. So is the changes he's making as good as that?
Better.
Okay,
He's actually eliminating one poll position
yeah,
and reducing another position. That is, the retiree is left,
okay,
and we're going to reduce that to a lower level clerical position.
okay, thank you.
And truly, that's truly the only clerical position within his office,
Yeah.
within his department, you know, so, you know, Karen's, the Brownfield assistant, I'm not sure how we titled Karen's position, but I do want to recognize not only, you know, John and Jean coming forward with this and John coming forward with this proposal, but the fact that they are actively in discussion with the City of Traverse City and the Downtown Development Authority to provide EDC leadership to them. Because the expertise that we have at the county in these issues far exceeds the other available expertise in our area. And the fact that they're willing to contract with us for our expertise will bring a revenue stream to our department and to the county, and it will also provide consistent, efficient service to our community, qualified service to our community. Herb?
Yeah, to tie into Dan's comment, I'm not sure you've answered the question because, you know, part of this, I think we would have to say that we would, if we're going to hire another person for this office, that wouldn't we have to also eliminate the hiring freeze for this office and this position?
Well, what he's doing is reorganizing his department.
I know what you're doing, but, you know, what you're going to do is you're going to hire an office specialist. You're going to go out to the community and you're going to hire another person, which means you're also going to have to ask to abate the hiring freeze for this position, is what I'm thinking.
Well, you're actually eliminating two positions and hiring one.
I understand.
So if you want
But you're still hiring.
I understand what
But
you're
you're
saying.
still hiring.
I get you.
So, and that's what Dan was trying to get to, and I'm just trying to clarify that comment, because we really are going to hire somebody. It's going to be another person coming into that office. So would we have to do that by abating the hiring freeze for this department in order to do that?
Can we do that as a one-time thing?
I mean, it's just a question.
Yeah.
Well, couldn't we just
Larry?
bring that
I-
party before the board and approve
I-
that one?
I think the difference, to me, is that, for example, the sheriff has 2 FTEs open. He's not lowering his FTEs, he's asking to fill those FTEs.
Yeah.
So we're saying we're not going to hire the current FTE structure that's approved in their FTE plan that people have left. We're going to hold on hiring those replacement FTEs. What makes this different is we're taking 2 FTEs off the table, removing them from their line item, and then creating a smaller line item to
I
replace
understand.
that. So the conceptual agreement behind the hiring freeze was not to bring them back to their current FTE structure. If I make that distinction.
It's strictly, process.
Yeah, you have to define hiring freeze.
I think you're right, Herb. I think we gotta do something about the hiring freeze.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need to do
I
something.
think this is
I
a
don't know what.
deviation. I truly believe you're probably right. This is a deviation from the hiring freeze, and it will need an exemption from the hiring freeze.
Yeah. So
So
just to clear it
I
up.
guess I would handle this in 2 motions. We have a motion to change the staffing plan. That's the recommendation, and I believe that's the motion that's on the table.
Correct.
Is to approve the staffing plan amendment. So I would
And then-
suggest that we take a vote on the staffing plan amendment, and then we take a vote authorizing them to hire the
Office specialist.
office specialists in exemption from the hiring freeze amendment.
I'm just a thought, you can do it in one motion by, really to exempt the position from the hiring freeze is to authorize the posting and filling of that position. That's what, you've given me authority to authorize the posting and filling of positions under certain conditions, if there's grants involved, if 80% of it is covered by grants, and yada, yada, yada. In this case, all you'd have to say is we approve this reorganization, and the director is authorized to post and fill the position.
Chris?
John, I appreciate what you're doing here, but I'm not prepared to vote in favor of this evening, primarily because I've already told the sheriff I'm holding the line on hiring. I've told GIS I'm holding the line on hiring. I want to wait until I've heard from all the departments and look at it as a whole. So, in all likelihood, I would vote for it at a later date, but not this evening.
Ditto.
Two separate issues. We can handle this as two issues. We can handle it first as to approve the staffing plan amendment, which is what the recommendation is. But then we can handle the hiring the office specialist as a separate issue. The amendment, the motion that's on the floor is to approve the staffing plan amendment.
Right.
My suggestion would be that we would vote on the staffing plan amendment, and then we will entertain a motion to fill that office specialist position,
Yeah.
or post for that office. Dave?
If I could just throw out that I'm really supportive of what John has put together here. I think it shows creative thinking. He's getting out in front of an issue that, he could wait for that issue to become a problem and then come to you with, I need more money or I need something else. John's being proactive in the process. He's eliminating 2 positions in his department and creating a lower-level position, and going out on the limb that, we're going to sign contracts for the rest of the duties that we haven't quite worked out yet. Part of morale in an organization is empowerment of your staff. To empower them to go out on that ledge and do something. And if you tell them that they shouldn't be doing that, or we've got a better idea. I know you've studied it really hard, but that's taking away their empowerment. And I'm supportive of what John's doing, and I think that you should be as well.
Dan?
I agree with you, but if you look at the empowerment thing, we've said no to the sheriff and no to a lot of other people. We're in the process now of trying to analyze how we're going to spend money. After we get done with that, I'm going to vote for this. But I think it's disappointing to others if we start doing this now.
Larry?
There is, in my mind, there's a major distinction. The hiring freeze that the board approved was that we were not going to fill their current FTE approved level authorized by them in the budget. And when those vacancies went, those people left the county, we were not going to fill their current FTE level, all right? And that gives us a gap of savings for the year, all right? That was part of the strategy. And the other part of the strategy was to come back and justify those positions, all right? What he is doing is totally separate. He's coming back and saying, I don't want my FTE level at the same level. I'm dropping it by 2. All right? So, and then I'm going to add a portion of it back, okay? So the hiring freeze was not to fill the current FTE level authorized by that department. This is totally different. He's dropping his FTE level, and he's supplementing it with a position still way below his current FTE level. To me, this is a separate deal. This is totally separate from the concept of holding positions until we go through this budget process, because we're not going to fill at our current level. He's dropping it down too and supplementing it with a smaller portion. So he's going to actually, at the end, if we approve the concept, have a lower FTE level by 1.5 or whatever than he originally had at the beginning of the year. So do you understand my rationale behind this?
I do, but what he's doing is preempting our decisions. We might very well, I don't think we'll do this, John, I'm confident we won't, but what if we said we wanted to drop 3 FTE? Okay? He's preempting that. We're making this decision for him. I appreciate your innovation, and I know your intentions are good. But still, we're preempting ourselves on this. I'm going to vote no on it.
Dave?
If John had not brought this in, his position, the retiring position would have been left open, because it's under the hiring freeze and we wouldn't appoint it. And then we would still have a planner position that we'd be paying for, which costs more than an office specialist. So, in a lot of ways, I'm sorry. I'll let John.
I understand you have your hiring freeze. I'm not sure what that policy states, but it seems to me that it could run counterintuitive in terms of trying to provide services by the county. For instance, I understand that the sheriff has two positions that have not been filled. But what is that in terms of percentage of his overall staff? The situation here, if we weren't to fill this and we eliminate the planner position, that cuts the department staff by 1/3. That gets us from 6 people down to 4 people. It becomes very difficult for us to operate at that level. I understand that any reduction in staffing has an impact on operations, but this is you look at it from a scale standpoint, this is a significant impact, and I'm not sure if that would be appropriate or meet the intent of what your policy might be, but it is a thought to consider what that policy might state in that regard.
Chris?
After listening to the arguments, I'm going to vote in favor of this. Hearing the administrator, John and Larry, I originally was going to vote no, but and I understand, why you would vote no, but I've been swayed.
Okay.
For whatever that's worth.
Call the question.
I'd like to take a vote on the question of approving the recommended staffing plan. That be to delete 1 FTE planner, 1 FTE planning technician, and to add 1 FTE office specialist.
That's the motion.
Everyone, that is the motion.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
No.
Roll call vote, please.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Inman,
Yes.
Rennie,
Yeah.
Lathrop,
No.
Wheelock.
Yes. Okay, so we've approved the staffing plan. Now I would entertain a motion to advertise to fill the position of office specialist in the planning department.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Lemkool, supported by Inman. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Inman,
Yes.
Rennie,
Yeah.
Lathrop,
No.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. All right, staff will post the position to fill an office specialist position in your department. And again, thank you for your leadership in reorganizing and trying to make sure we're being the most efficient we can be in all of our county departments.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, that would bring us to Finance Department.
I have for you 4 budget adjustments. They're starting on page 20. And since there's just a few of them, I would like to walk you through them. The first one may seem rather strange, but this is the funds that were returned from the Department of Human Services. If you recall, in the 2014 budget, we did not budget an appropriation to the Department of Human Services because we were aware that they had funds that could be returned to us, and I did ask for those funds. However, we need, and I have received that reimbursement, but we do need to budget that now to cover their appropriations. And as you can see, $33,315 of that is already, it has been approved by the board in the child care fund budget. So we really need to do this. They're requesting those funds, and as I've already stated, they have returned those funds to the county. The next one, the homestead fund, when we put budgets together, we have to estimate where we're going to end the year, and I overestimated where the fund balance would be in Fund 257 and also in Fund 278, the Housing Trust Fund, which are the second and third adjustments on the first page. So these adjustments are necessary to bring those budgets in line with their actual fund balances. And because we don't have the books closed yet, you may see a minor fund balance adjustment for these two funds later in the year. And then the last one, which is on page 21, is from your capital improvement fund. And some of the projects that we funded in 2013, primarily the chiller or cooling unit on this building, we simply did not do. So this budget amendment for the capital improvement fund is just carrying those approved projects and funding forward into 2014. And I would ask for your approval on these budget amendments.
Ken?
Make motion that we approve?
Support.
Motion by Lathrop, supported by Limcool to approve the budget adjustments for 2014 as outlined by the Finance Director. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you, Dean. Okay, that would bring us to unfinished business. I asked earlier to add Alicia Kropa under unfinished business. Alicia's here this evening to speak about the joint meeting that we've talked about and trying to create a schedule for that with the Parks and Recreation Commission. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Not used to the podium. Feel like I should be on my tiptoes. Okay. Elisa Kropa, your county parks president as of a few days ago. First thing I did, about 10 minutes after being elected president, was make a motion to dissolve our county park strategic plan and start from scratch. I think it's time, new year. I think it's time to start over. So the board was very receptive, actually more so than I thought, to the idea, with one caveat, and that was to change the word from dissolve to dissolve or amend the strategic plan. I think all 10 of us were in agreement that we have a problem in county parks, and this may be the best way to move forward this year. So with a bit more discussion, we decided that after a joint meeting with the county board, we would actually vote probably at that meeting on our own commission to either dissolve our plan and start from scratch or to amend it. And that would be, both ideas are with guidance from the Board of Commissioners. Without your help, I don't think we can move forward in parks this year. So that's why we have done a doodle poll amongst our 10 commissioners. 10 is a large commission and an even number, which makes it difficult to not only get a quorum, but to get people to agree on dates. We've come up with a top 3 possibilities of dates. We're cognizant of the fact that you guys are meetinged out with the budget process this year, but I ask you to try to find time to squeeze in this one more meeting, because I think once we meet and discuss things with you, we can move on our own way and come up with a new plan to bring before you to be approved later on, hopefully within the month. The 3 dates that we have chosen are all in the first week of February. I understand that Commissioner Lathrop and I believe Commissioner Wheelock are on vacation at some point. On our, for our commission, it's Commissioners Doran and McKellier are also, so we would love to get this meeting done before the vacation, so we're able to have a quorum from each of the commissions. We have Thursday, February 6th.
That's the only one that works for me.
From 6 to 8.
That's the only date that works for me on that week.
That's it,
Okay.
me too.
Well, that's the date that worked for 7 of our commissioners, which was more than a quorum. So if that date works for at least a majority of the Board of Commissioners, I'd like to get that on the books and organized so we can meet together and see if we can get on the same page here.
February 6th.
6 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
6 o'clock. It would
6
be
o'clock
Thursday,
works.
February 6th, from 6 to 8.
Works.
Done.
I think we'd already put it in our schedule, so somehow I've got it in there already. So,
If there's conflicts, we
You're
just-
clairvoyant.
come on, I've already got that there.
Motion to have a joint meeting with the Parks Commission on February 6th, Thursday at 6 PM at the, either Second Scudder or Chambers.
To be determined, we have 17
We gotta
commissioners.
post it.
Yep, we have 17 commissioners
Probably at
and
the
2
Civic
staff
Center.
members.
I would say the Civic Center. but-
Either that or
So-
the training
Do
room
it-
works
do it.
too.
Training room.
Training room would probably be better.
Let's do the training room.
Okay.
I'll
Once we
support.
had agreed,
That's
we
the
were
mo-
going to contact
that's
Chris
the motion.
Kramer.
Training room, okay?
Give me more room. I have a motion, do I have support? Okay, motion by Inman, supported by Maxbar. Further discussion? All right, I have a couple things.
Yes.
Number one, I will not be here. I'm out of town that week. But that's neither here nor there. I have a slight problem with the concept of scrapping, dissolving, whatever you want to say, of the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan. We have a county Parks and Recreation Master Plan that was developed and passed by the Parks Commission, was passed by the Board of Commissioners, and it's been passed by the Michigan State Department of Natural Resources. The strategic plan aligns itself with that master plan, or supposedly aligns itself with that master plan. I don't know how you can scrap the strategic plan without amending the master plan.
Well, the master plan was prepared and passed after the strategic plan. The strategic plan was created in 2011, passed for a 2012 through 2015 time period. We're 2 years into a 4-year strategic plan right now. We have had little to no success.
Well, I'm trying to remember, and I haven't had opportunity to read the two documents recently to where I can tell whether the strategic plan aligns itself with the master plan. But if the strategic plan is done properly, and the master plan is done properly, the two should align with each other. You know, you should be working toward the same goals. The goals that you set in your master plan should be what you're working toward in your strategic plan. So I don't know how you can say we're going to throw away the strategic plan and draw a completely different strategic plan unless the goals that were set in your master plan are not what you drew your strategic plan to.
Well, I think that's probably a fair statement. Different commissions, groups of people, processes created two plans that are diversely in contrast of each other. And if you need no further example of it than the lack of anything being done in county parks right now. I spent hours with Jason the day after our meeting on Thursday, and he and I were in agreement on this. He said I will get no opposition from him on this. Jason is frustrated, the commission is frustrated. We want to move forward, but we can't do that without the guidance of the Board of Commissioners. We answer to you. We can create all the strategic plans that we want, but all it takes is 3 of you to overturn anything that we do. So if we're trying to open communication and we're trying to create a better list of things to do, what better than to do it in conjunction with the Board of Commissioners?
Yeah, and I have no problem, and I was a strong supporter and advocate a long time ago of creating a joint meeting between the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Board of Commissioners to make sure that the goals that we set forth in the master plan and the goals that we in turn have in place in the strategic plan are aligned with, are still mutually agreeable to both bodies. That being said, you know, I still have this problem, and like I said, I can't remember the specific goals and how it fits the strategic plan, but
Well, I'd ask that each of you read it.
the point would be, keep in mind as you review the strategic plan, you know, whether you amend, you know, it's truly an amendment to a strategic plan. It's not a dissolving of the other one. It's an amendment. It's a rewrite. But keep in mind that the idea of the strategic plan is to align itself with the county's Parks and Recreation master plan. We're not in a position at this point to rewrite the master plan without going through the process. And that process is lengthy, you know, and because the plan has to be drawn by the Parks and Recreation Commission. They have to take input from various user groups and those kind of things as is required in the ordinance. And then that plan has to be approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission. There has to be a public hearing. There has to be a time for the public to give input. And then it has to go before the County Board of Commissioners, and they have to approve it. And then it has to be forwarded to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and then they have to approve it. You know, you can't just say we're going to throw away the master plan.
I never said we're going to throw away the master plan.
I understand that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that it's important to make sure that as we look at the strategic plan, that the strategic plan aligns itself with the master plan.
This is why we want to meet with the Board of Commissioners. I just want to remind everyone that maybe isn't involved in Parks and Rec as heavily as I am in different entities, that a strategic plan is not alongside or parallel a master plan, it's subordinate to it. It's something, it's a to-do list. That's what I call a strategic plan. We have a to-do list right now that our director can't check one item off on. Why? Several reasons. The economic climate of the county, perhaps the issues with the board, although I think that those are solved, but most of all because the mentality and the philosophy that created that strategic plan is not in alignment with the Board of Commissioners that sits before me. Perhaps it was with the ones when it was created, but not the current board. So that's all I ask, is that we get on the same page and we move forward. Every single one of the 10 of us have said we cannot have another year in County Parks and Rec like we had last year. This is my solution to it. Jason is in agreement with it. I've had great conversations with Administrator Benda, who supports this idea as well. Jason and I have discussed about maybe a one-year strategic plan with 5 items on it. And those items are in reach. They're low-hanging fruit. They're not big picture, multi-million-dollar civic center projects. They're things that we can take and check off, and at the end of the year, Jason and our commission can come before the board, and even more important, the voters, and say, look at what we've done in county parks. And then maybe when we have that success, then we move on to a 2-year strategic plan. I don't want to touch the master plan. The master plan is written for MDNR grants. I mean, really, there's such a framework for what you do. And we follow that, and we have a great master plan in county parks. I'm talking about the strategic plan. I'm talking about the to-do list. I'm talking about giving us all the opportunity to work together and actually accomplish something this year in Parks and Rec. I ask you to read the plan, go over it, get your opinion, come with your opinions about what the board feels about our strategic plan, and we will share ours as well. I guarantee you the 17 of us are not going to agree on everything in the room, but let's create a list of 5 items maybe we can. Give us the opportunity to succeed. Right now, with the current strategic plan, we're headed for failure. Okay. I'd like to stop it before that. I can't call. I'm not the chair. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you that if we've got a 5-year master plan filed with the state, we should keep that in place for the ability to get grants and those types of issues. But I would see this as a very healthy process to go through, because a number of items have come up that we're aware of that we really haven't sat down with the Parks and Rec Department with. And my presumption is that they probably would want to make sure that we have a comfort level with some of the direction and talking that might occur in the coming year. And they have really a lot of things on the plate, if you really think about it. You know, they have, okay, what are we going to do with Maple Bay? Are we going to keep it passive? There was a plan that we were going to get some money and do some different things with Maple Bay, and we haven't followed up with that. Do we keep Twin Lakes in the same type of operation? There was some discussion about creating more capital infrastructure at the Civic Center, which, you know, I'm deeply opposed to. And there are some philosophical things that I think perhaps I think that the new president, I think, is probably perhaps trying to indicate that we want to make sure that as they move along year by year, these are the kind of things that you would like to see us work on as well, and we have a consensus, so we don't have, you know, so they don't move in a direction and they say, well, you know, we're not real hot on that issue, we got to get back together again. I think this is probably a good process to sit down and talk about everything, you know, that's on the plate and whether we like it or not, and, you know, and move on.
I don't disagree with that at all, and I believe that it's important to note that, this joint meeting is very important. I guess my only reminder is to remember that we have a master plan in place, and as we're looking at drawing a strategic plan, that should somewhat align toward the goals that were set forth in the master plan.
I agree with you, Sonny. For that reason, I'd like to get a copy of the master plan.
Right.
And maybe I have a copy of your strategic plan.
Both are online on the County Parks and Recreation homepage,
Yeah.
on the county website. They're lengthy, so printing them out is a bit lengthy,
I
but
will ask staff to direct copies of both the Parks and Recreation master plan and the strategic plan to all the commissioners prior to that meeting on the 6th.
Great.
If we just have a link, and so we can pull it up on our laptops, it'd be a lot better than printing. I mean, that's.
That's why we have the laptops.
That's why we have the laptops. So if we could just have them pulled in, and so we can get a copy, so we can see it here, and we can read it on our laptops. That would be much appreciated.
All right. Were there any other questions?
So just to comment on Larry's comment about the Civic Center, there are a lot of people that aren't in favor of doing a larger, there's a lot of people who are in favor of it.
Right.
So
And I-
it is split in the community, and I just want to know, I
And I
just
know
want
you've been
everybody to
work-
know.
and I know you've
this
been
is
working-
not something that's going to be done in the next year, 2, 3, or 4 years. This is something that they were looking at planning down 5, 10, 12 years down the road.
Okay.
So.
Chris?
Commissioner Lemkool, I'm going to disagree with you on your recent statement, primarily because the Parks Commission had a public hearing, numerous people, we had a great deal of public input regarding specifically the Civic Center Master Plan. And this is one of Parks Commissioner Doran's biggest complaints, is we had a very open public process, and not one person came forward and said, we want this magnificent rec center eating up the Civic Center Park.
But-
No one came. And so the master plan was created based upon that public input. And this is something that we need to talk about. Now, if you, as a commissioner, want us to redo the Civic Center master plan, this joint meeting would be your opportunity to do
And
that.
I understand that, but I also know that part of that master plan was to look at Oak Park School as to whether or not that could be part of a civic facility.
Yes.
and we
so-
did have confirmation from TCAPS that
and
that's not
just
possible at
available.
all.
And I understand that.
Yeah, and that was
Yeah.
what the commission had understood to be the death
Right.
of that idea. However, the Civic Center seems to, it's the bad relative that never goes away,
Yeah.
you know? I think it really is. The Parks Commission would love, my hopes is to not have the Civic Center be in our strategic plan for 2014. I think we have a standing master plan that was created with community input and done. I would like to see us focus on something a little more tangible than that. Does that mean that it's dead in the water? No. It just means for 2014, I would love to see us hone it in.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to hold a joint meeting with the Parks and Recreation Commission on February 6th at 6 p.m. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners. Enjoy your reading.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay.
I like seeing that, don't you, Madam President?
We have no additional unfinished business. We have no new business. That brings us to the second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make comment at this time? Seeing none, we have
But I'll make a
Commissioner
motion
Committee
to adjourn.
reports.
Oh, I'm sorry, you gotta go through the reports.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. We had a rather interesting presentation from the Village of Grand Traverse Commons that I thought would be very important if you want to look at it. At our last economic development was talked about all the things that's happened at the Commons. There's 875,700 square feet of total square footage. There's 401,000 square feet of residentials in that place now. There's 464,600 square feet of commercial space. Most, if not all, is either completed, under construction, or planned or projected. There are 383 residential units. There's 177 commercial retail units, There's $183,924,800 investment personal property in that facility. There are 797 jobs that have been created out there. This is a huge success story for our community.
It's 52%
And in
complete.
2015, the
Renaissance Zone?
Renaissance Zone goes away, starts to go away. So that will be an opportunity for more income to come into mostly the city, because that's inside the city. But we do receive some value out of that. So we have to provide those services. And the other thing is, I just wanted to bring up, is I thought it was interesting, the article in the Record Eagle on Sunday, talking about our projected growth in our community. Grand Traverse County, they're looking at, by the year 2024, 30,000 more people in our community. Wow. The 34% growth by 2040, excuse me.
I probably won't be here.
And the majority of those people are going to be over 65.
I'll be 91.
But this is not going to happen in 2040.
Yeah.
This is going to be happening incrementally every year up to that point. By that time, we will have that many more people in our community. So I just like to call attention to that when we start looking at our budgets. Now that we can't be looking at just being short-sighted as to what's going to happen today or tomorrow. We also have to look into the future and find out how are we going to provide those services for our people that are coming. Hang on, they're coming.
I don't have to look to 2040.
That'll be your last term, huh, Dickie?
I would note, in regard to Building 50, I had opportunity recently to speak at the groundbreaking for the Concordia expansion, the residential that's now under development. And I stress to these people, this is probably the greatest public-private partnership that's ever been created in Michigan and possibly in the country. The idea, the brownfield, the county, the city, the Parks Authority, everyone that's been involved in this, along with Ray Minervini and his group and all of the other investors that have been involved in the development. It is absolutely the greatest partnership of public and private function that's ever happened anywhere.
They came this close to getting plowed down.
Hands down. Wow.
Yeah.
And I mentioned, I can remember when I first came to the county board that basically the state had very recently, for all practical purposes, dumped that property on the county. We had this large tract of land, no plan of what to do with it, how to handle it. We had rapidly deteriorating buildings, no money to fix them or anything else. And along came Ray with a vision. And, I have to tell you that, that night and many nights since then, I've sat back and looked at his vision and think that he was out there somewhere.
Oh, man.
But it's came to fruition, and it's an amazing facility if you get an opportunity.
Amazing what you get for $1.
Yeah.
Because for $1, he got that by putting the roof on and having the south unit finished.
Oh,
It
yeah.
cost him $1 million to put that roof on.
Yeah, and we got for $1 2 dams.
Well,
Thanks.
All right, moving right along.
On that
All right.
happy note,
Is there any
Commissioner
other
Randolph.
business to come before this commission? We have no need for closed session. I'll entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
All gone. Good night.